everybody, I'm here with just a quick video talking about a book that I read recently that is a very hyped book. You've probably heard of it. This is A Court of Thorn and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. Often it's referred to by the acronym ACOTAR. This is a series. There's 5 books in the series. This is the first one. That most people refer to this series as by this particular name. Now, I wanted to just do my review of this book, talked about what I liked and I didn't like. Did it live up to the hype? There's a lot of hype around this book. And then just talk as well about some of the books that I'm like what I'm currently reading, what I plan to read, because I really want to get back more into reading this year. And I did start last year to get back more into it. I didn't do a whole lot of reading this past year and the year before. If you've been on this channel, you know that there's kind of been like a little bit of weird, stressful years, but I really wanted to get back into fiction. I used to read a lot of fiction when I was young. Particularly when I was young, I read a lot of classics. So things like Jane Austen and the Bronte sisters and Charles Dickens. And so a lot of like Victorian type literature when I was younger. I also, when I was a teenager, read some fantasy, especially like the Dungeons and Dragons, Dragonlance series. I read a lot of fantasy. I also got a little bit into Stephen King horror for a little while. But most of what I read was the classics. And then when I went to university, I did English and history first, and then I went into fine arts. And so the English literature that I did was both medieval and Victorian literature. So I majored in English and history, and then I went to fine arts where I majored in drawing and photography. So anyway, I have a background in literature, but for the longest time, I've been reading mostly nonfiction type books, witchy type books, and not a lot of fiction. And I really want to get back into fiction and reading for fun. And so I thought a place to start might be with romantasy. So romantasy is it's fantasy with romance in it. Romance is the major point of the plot, although there'll also be, fantastic or fantasy elements in it as well. So it's kind of a mix of the two. I think there's certain series that are more fantasy with like some romance, and then there's some that is heavily romance based, but it's just in like a fantasy type of world. And I thought this might be a fun way to kind of like get back into reading fiction. And so I had, some friends and coworkers who are really into reading who recommended this series to me. I see this series all over the place. I see it on Book Talk. Like I follow some Book Talk people and some BookTube people, a lot of people talking about this. And so it's a really hyped up book. I know there's people who love this book and who think it's like the greatest thing since sliced bread. So I went into it with an open mind because I know in the past when I've tried to read books that are very hyped up, often they do not live up to the hype. Other people love them, and different books are for different people, right? I think the only books that lived up to the hype for me were the Harry Potter series. I remember when it first came out, I had a friend who was like, you gotta read these are amazing. And at first I was like, I don't know. Plus I was also like, they're a children's book, right? But then when I did read them, I was like, this is amazing. It's amazing writing. Like I loved this series. So I'm always open to new suggestions because you never know. Twilight, I couldn't take it. I tried even like the movie, I couldn't take it. I remember like watching the first movie and having to shut it off at the point where they're running through the woods and Edward is sparkling. I'm just like, I've had enough. I just can't do this anymore. It was just a little bit too much for me. It's a little too saccharine for me, and a little bit too, it didn't have a lot of substance, at least in my opinion. I know there's other people who love it, and if you love it, no shade to you. I'm glad you love it. I'm glad you enjoy it. So I went into this with an open mind, and I read A Court of Thorn and Roses. So does it live up to the hype? The short answer for me is no, it doesn't. But there is some caveats to it. I still enjoyed reading this book. I have to say that there may be some spoilers if you haven't read this as I talk about it. I'll try not to do that too much. But if you really don't want any spoilers, then you might have to shut off this video at this point. But I think that, I went into this I had an open mind. I really wasn't sure what to expect, although I was told that it was amazing story writing, that the series is great. I was also promised a lot of spice. If you don't know what spicy means, it means there's a lot of smut. And so I was promised some smut. So I would say that this book, the pace of this book, I think can throw some people off. And I do know there are people who got frustrated and did not finish it, DNF'd it. The problem, I think part of the problem with this book is that the first 2/3 of the book are quite slow, and then most of the action is in the last third of the book. So if you're not willing to wade through that first 2/3 or so, and know that it's just like it's a bit slower and that it's going to pick up, I think that you might get bored along the way. I think as well that this whole book is setting things up for a series, and that the first part of the book is setting things up for the rest of the book. And my issue with that is like the pacing, just I wish it was a little bit more even. I don't mind if things are like a slow build, but I felt like it yeah, it was slow in the first 2/3 and then a bunch of stuff happened in the last third of the book. This has been sort of marketed as a retelling or another sort of version of Beauty and the Beast. I actually don't really see it that way, because I think that it doesn't have the depth of symbolism that Beauty and the Beast has. The premise of this story is it's set in a fantasy world, and we have a young woman. Her family she lives with her dad and 2 of her sisters, and he's lost his fortune and they're very poor. And so to provide for her family, she goes and hunts in the woods. However, the woods is close to the border of the fairy realm, and the human and the fairy realms are separate. There was a war a long time ago in the past. Humans are afraid, they hate fairies. And then one day she sees a very large wolf, and she kills the wolf. She shoots the wolf. However, the wolf is not what it appears to be. And so a fairy comes one day and takes her away as punishment for killing this wolf, and takes her back to the fairy realm. I personally found the whole premise, and again, I'm gonna unfortunately have to get a little bit into spoilers here, a little bit weak. Like, it was strange to me that, she kills this wolf and then her punishment is to go live with a fairy in luxury. That seems like a really weird premise to me. Like, it seemed quite weak. And then her character, like, she's very she's kind of like a little bit snarky to her hosts. She's kind of defensive. She's not very open. And so she basically falls in love with this fairy who's taken her away. And some people might say Stockholm syndrome, but she falls in love with this fairy and he falls in love with her. And I always find this kind of premise a bit ridiculous, where you have like this fairy who's apparently like hundreds of years old, and he falls in love with a 19-year-old girl. Why? I don't understand. Like, I don't understand why, I have to say, why these two characters are enamored with each other, other than that they're in the vicinity of each other. I don't really get what the connection is here. I feel like I didn't really understand like why she fell in love with him, other than she may be physically attracted to him, or why he would be attracted to her at all. Another thing that I found with this is that the descriptions aren't very, like, I wish this book was a little bit more descriptive. Now, I know some people's writing style is they like people to kind of fill in the stuff for themselves, but I wish there was a greater description of things like the environment that she's in. She's in this like big, beautiful house, and I feel like the descriptions could have been better. I feel like the descriptions even of the main characters weren't very clear. I mean, I know that the main character has blonde hair and that his friend has red hair, but that's really kind of it. There's a, and describing like sometimes what they're wearing or whatever, but I wish there was better descriptions of people, better descriptions of places, descriptions of like the woods, the environment that they're in. I wish there was just a little bit more filling in of that. I also found like there was not a lot of good foreshadowing in this book, so a lot of the plot twists seemed rather convenient. Like, it didn't seem that there was a lot of foreshadowing leading up to things. It was like, oh yeah, well, the curse is because of this. and somebody will like, it's nobody has to like dig and find things out. It's like all of a sudden it's like revealed suddenly. I felt like it just seemed like some of the plot twists just seemed very convenient and handy. There was no sort of leading up or no foreshadowing to that twist. I felt like it was just like really convenient. And I think that's just like the quality, like the writing's okay. I'm not saying it's the worst writing or anything like that. It is okay. But I just felt like it could have been better. Like this story could have worked better. There could have been more foreshadowing. There could have been like where she had to really dig deep to kind of get the answers to what was going on under the surface of things, instead of like, she doesn't know, and then one day somebody just tells her. I really felt like that could have been done just a little bit better. I also was promised smut, and I gotta say, most of this book was spice level was rather oatmeal-y. There is a little more spice towards the end of the book, and apparently the other books do get spicier, but I just thought it was kind of like just sort of like, maybe it was like a poblano pepper and not a jalapeno. It was just like a little bit of spice, but not a lot. So the smutty side of me was a little disappointed in that. I have to say, like, even with all those criticisms, like, I really felt like the characters could have been developed better, the scenery could have been developed better. I felt there could have been better foreshadowing, because the plot just felt like there were these convenient turns where it was like, oh, well, this is just the explanation for that. I felt like that just could have been a lot better. It still was like a fun read. Like, I would not put this into like high literature or anything like that. It was fun, and I think I have to look at it that way. Like, when I guess the most of the fiction that I've read in the past are things like, I've read Austen, obviously, and Bronte and Dickens and Dostoevsky and stuff. I can't really compare this to that. I have to remember that this is not in the same kind of genre. But I just found it like, it was kind of fluffy is what I'm saying about this. It's kind of a fluffy, fun book. If you're not looking for high literature, if you just want a fun romance set in a fantasy setting, I would say go for it. I mean, go for it, read it. Maybe you will fall in love with it and be like, this is the best thing since sliced bread. If you're looking for like high literature or something that's going to make you laugh or cry or, get really emotionally involved, I would say maybe take a pass on this one. I am going to read the second book in the series. I am going to read the Court of Mist and Fury. I've been told, oh, the series gets better, the explanations are better. So I am going to give it a chance still. I am going to go on to read the next one. I did, like I said, it was like it's just like a fun thing. Like it is, I'm trying to make a comparison here. So instead of having like a delicious, amazing 3-course meal, this is more like, it's like, an okay trip to McDonald's, like maybe it's better than that. Maybe a better comparison is you went to a greasy diner and you had a nice greasy spoon kind of like lunch there and you enjoyed yourself. That would be more what this is like. So if you're expecting fine dining, this is not it. I am going to read, like I said, the second book, but I know that this is a super popular book and people really love it. Let me know what your thoughts are if you love it. Now, as for other books, I am still reading Witch in Darkness, as far as witchy books go, by Kellyanne Maddox. I am really enjoying this book, and when I'm done with it, I will give it a full review as well. My goal this year, we'll see if I do it or not, is I want to read some romantasy, just for fun. I'm a busy person and there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and sometimes it is good just to have a fun escape, a greasy spoon diner meal every once in a while. You need that. And so I want to kind of have a year of romantasy and see what I think of it, see which ones are the best, see which ones are good and bad, and recommend them to you or not. I would give this 3 stars. Now, to be clear, 3 stars does not mean it's bad. To me, a 5-star book is like a book that changes your life. They're pretty rare. A 4-star book is one that's like amazing. It's really great, and I would highly recommend it to people. A 3-star book for me is one that's pretty good. I think some people will like it, some people won't. 2 stars mediocre, 1 means don't bother, and 0 means put it in the trash. So this is a 3-star book for me. I'm going to see what the next one is like. And like I said, when I'm back, I will do it. When I do another one of these, I will do a review of that book. And I also want to do a review when I'm done of this book here, Witch in Darkness. So my plan is I'd like to read one fiction book and one nonfiction book each month. That is the goal that I have. We'll see if we get there. Let me know what you think. Do you like the ACOTAR series, The Court of Thorn and Roses? Do you have any recommendations when it comes to romantasy books? People have already recommended to me Fourth Wing, and also one called Phantasmic or Phantasma, which is more of like a dark fantasy romance. So if you have any others, please put them in the comment box below. Or maybe, let me know what you think. Maybe you love this book. Maybe you're like saying, Lou, you are missing the point of this book. Let me know what your thoughts are. I'd love to hear it. Again, if you would like to check out my Patreon, I got to do the plug right at the end here. Thank you, first of all, to my patrons. You guys are amazing. Right now, we are going through the Artist's Way with creativity. We're going through the Aleister Crowley Tarot over there. And as always, I have weekly astrology reports and tarot scopes. I also do monthly private readings, so you can check that out. And then also, if you want a reading for me, this month of January, I have on sale my year ahead astrology and 12th house and angel readings, so you can check that out as well. But just thank you for being here, and thank you for watching. I really appreciate it. And as always, peace and love.